our live interview alongside my co-host CJ Sturmer. We'll be talking about the funnel and how COVID has really shifted things as a result, and provide some real-world tactics from CJ's experience on what you can do to respond. So Fondi is an all-in-one virtual event platform built for marketing teams to help drive revenue, increase engagement, and maximize retention. So we're always looking for new opportunities to improve the platform, learn from the field, and host other marketers to get their outlook on the space. Which brings me to introducing our guest speaker today, CJ. CJ, can you give everyone a quick intro about yourself, your background, and what we're going to chat about today?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to learn together. That's all why we're here, right? I always say the only way we can make real change is if we do it together. So we have to keep spreading knowledge. So Erin, thank you so much to you and to Fondi for inviting me on here. I'm really excited to talk about what we've learned. My name is CJ Sturmer, and I am the Senior Director of Marketing and Education for a company called Rescue, the Behavior Change Agency. And my background is I've been doing sort of marketing on purpose for about 15 years, on accident, I always say, for about 20 years. It's something I accidentally got into and really enjoyed through a very experiential way. I've always enjoyed human interaction as a way of learning, and then almost regurgitating that knowledge back to them to be able to connect them to resources and tools that would benefit either their career or whatever they're trying to accomplish, like for conferences and things like that. I did a lot of work in DC and New York City with federal governments, worked with a lot of federal agencies, the White House. I was very fortunate. I got to work with Michelle Obama. Amazing and easiest person to work with, I think, in my career, if you believe it or not.
Wow.
But then I've been here now in Los Angeles for about 7 years now. I've been with Rescue for about 5. And my primary role here is we really focus on, so our audience, our primary customer base is public health. And so we strive to make positive behavior change easier and more appealing for the public health audience. So we develop media campaigns that are very visual focused, cater to all sorts of audiences through a multitude of topic areas, like tobacco prevention, obesity, nutrition, substance abuse risk education, that kind of thing. And so primarily what we've always done is that marketing and being able to get our information out there to our potential customers. Public health is a very wide net of people. And so we've had to really expand to think, okay, how can we get information out there when it's such a crowded and a loud space, to be able to say, hey, we are somebody that can help you accomplish your goals. And how do we do that, especially during the pandemic, right? It's one of, I think, the biggest public health crises that I know that I've seen in my generation. That affects a large global group of people. And so through that noise, how do we still make ourselves seen and heard and draw people in? And so that's kind of where we sort of started to think about marketing in terms of the pre versus post-pandemic world.
Yeah, and that's really right in line with a lot of what our registrants said as well. When they were signing up, I had a question on the form: what's been your biggest challenge as a marketer post-COVID? And it's been cutting through the noise, dealing with opt-outs, low open rates. We were just talking about the challenges we've been seeing, knowing who we're actually reaching with our messaging. So I think, just to set the stage for everyone here today, these are areas where we're really going to dive into more. CJ's got some great examples he can share as takeaways. So with that, we will dive into the main interview, be about 40 minutes of us chatting about some of these tactics, and then we'll end with a live Q&A and we can go over our polls. So again, I welcome everyone to start engaging with the polls. We're really curious to hear what you've been experiencing and how you plan to continue to adapt to this ever-changing landscape that we've been navigating for this past year, and will continue to. So with that, CJ, I'd love to just take a step back, and you kind of started discussing what your tactics were pre-pandemic. How were you adapting to that landscape, and then how has it changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think before any of us can even evaluate, what happened during, and even I say after the pandemic, even though we're still there, but in terms of marketing, we think of after, because we've learned after a year, we have to really kind of stop and evaluate what were we doing before. Right. I think everyone was really kind of stuck in their rhythm. They were like, I learned my 4 Ps when I did marketing. And, I learned, certain open rates, certain click rates. And then after that, I have a funnel, right? When the customer engages this large group here, they did this, and then I send them to the next thing and forward. And, for us, it was really concentrating on for our work is very evidence-based and we're very creative driven. So how do we get that in front of people? So for us, it was really delivering presentations at conferences. So it was like, okay, let's go to all the conferences we can. And we had a very robust marketing budget to be able to do that. And you know what? It brought in a lot of really good leads. We were seeing a lot of our potential customers there, our current customers. And so it was an opportunity to keep people informed in what we were doing, and then maybe following up with some emails and some case studies. You know, we were printing all of our case studies. We put information bags together, swag, you know, a lot of stuff that I think a lot of us have been doing for years. Because that's what we were used to. That's how we were consuming information. That's how we were doing it. And of course, we had social media, and we would try to use that for thought provoking. You know, we put a blast here, a tweet there, a Facebook post here, a LinkedIn post there. But it was really kind of siloed, and it was very focused on what the audience was consuming in that channel at that time. And it was almost habitual, right? It was almost like, well, this is working. Let's keep it moving forward. It's driving engagement. It's driving in sales. You know, I think pre-pandemic, we were calculating at a conference in one given year, we were getting anywhere from 2 to 3 to 400 leads, depending on the success of the conference that year. Like I remember we had one conference that was focused on tobacco prevention, like the tobacco prevention conference. And it was just, we were front and center. We were the primary sponsor. We were the biggest booth. You know, we had a lot of leads that came out of that, and we had some really good conversations with folks because that one-to-one engagement is a lot of value, right? That's how we get to know people. That's how we get to know our customers. That's how we get to know what people want, is having conversations with people. And then the pandemic hit, and I couldn't meet and have conversations with people. And even some of the conferences we were going to, they just stopped communicating. And so that's when we really had to figure out, okay, what were we doing? And what would work now that people aren't in person?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's like, if I had to summarize the approach pre-pandemic, for me, it was repeatable, structured, and almost rigid. I use habitual, I think, is a fantastic word, though. And what I'm grateful for is, for this shift, I've been questioning a lot of what I've always considered best practice. Because let's be real, best practice has such a different definition. One size does not fit all anymore. And so now really is the time to question what you've always thought. One of my favorite quotes is, "The mark of a great mind is a willingness to change it." So I think now is the time to really just be open. And I would love for you to go a little bit more in depth into how you've shifted your approach. I know you've kind of touched on it, but you've got this, you know, obviously, you know, you said textbook, our 4 Ps. I think another textbook approach is really the tofu, mofu, bofu, the funnel. So how did you transition from that mindset and that approach to this web of influence that you've really kind of coined that term? And I think it's super relevant to today.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think before we even get into like where we call it the web of influence, and I'll talk a little bit to that. But one of the first things I noticed was just how inundated the digital world got, whether it was webinars, emails, social posts, paid digital. I think one of the statistics I read is that paid digital just on Facebook alone increased by 23% during the pandemic.
Wow.
Their ad placement increased so much. So what happened is, and especially thinking about, you know, we're all used to social media. We're used to emails. You know, I think, you know, my millennial generation really got to understand email and really drove that trend. But I think just being virtual and digital, I think Generation Z has really shown that, right? Like, they're the first generation that's born in a digital world. And so it's normal. The device in their hand is normal. Being on a computer and the internet is normal to them. And so I think because of all of those trends together, we couldn't be in person. So a lot of those things that we were doing in person, or finding ways to interact with each other, whether it be at events, at conferences, in our own neighborhoods, or, you know, our sales tactics of visiting people in their office, all that went away, and everyone got forced into a digital space. And I always say this, one of my colleagues, Kelly, and I, like, one of the first things that we noticed is we're getting a lot of emails, right? And you think about just in the first few weeks or even the month of the pandemic, how many of you out there were just like, okay, everyone is talking to me about their approach to the pandemic. Like, do we really care about what Tostitos Pizza Rolls is doing in response to the pandemic, right? And I'm not to make fun of them, but that's not always something. I literally got an email from Tostitos Pizza Rolls, and I was like, how did I even get on this list? And so that struck me as everyone was really forcing themselves in a digital world, and it was creating just this amount of noise. And how are we going to break through that noise in a way that was intentional and a good use of our time, especially if you're someone that has a lean marketing department? Like, we don't have, dozens of people that work on our marketing for our agency. We have a team of 2. And so how could we use that lean marketing tactic to really be intentional about reaching customers and potential customers in a way that they could also break through their noise to say, okay, this is something that pertains to me and I can delete all these other things. And I think it took some experimenting, right? It took really kind of understanding like, okay, well, let's start with what I know people are consuming. What are our emails doing? What do we need to switch there? We had to make them shorter. We had to make sure that we were leading our subject lines and testing them better to say, okay, we're not going to talk about the pandemic in our subject line because that's what everyone else was doing. So it started with small changes in testing that, right? And one of the key things I want to really make sure I'm honing into everyone is if you're not creating testability in your own research in everything that you do, you're missing the boat. I think that's what the virtual space and the digital space has given us the opportunity to do, is to create more opportunities for testing our own stuff to say, okay, this worked. Let me tweak it a little bit. Does it work better or did it work less? And doing those A/B testings has really got us to understand. And what I started to notice is that when we started to talk about stories, organic nature of things, we stopped doing paid digital altogether. Yeah. I haven't paid for digital advertisement since the beginning of 2020. Wow. Because we haven't needed to, because of the shift that we made was starting to get organic, real, raw with it. Like, here is what we are encountering. We're going to make videos that talk about, specifically from a human, that talk about this is what we're encountering in our research. We're talking about what we know our customers need. In public health, they care about research. They care about how we're reaching the populations that we serve. And so, okay, let's talk about that. Let's be specific about how we're pivoting and doing research digitally. Okay, now let's tell them about that small piece to go, oh, okay, you're doing something else that no one else is. And from that, we understand, okay, we're missing that human element. We're missing the time where we could go to a client's office. We're missing the time we could go to events, where we could go to conferences. How do we pivot that? And I think we did something that a lot of people were doing, and that was webinars. Yeah. But when we talk about webinars, they have always existed. They're not new. We had never done them before. That was not something that we had even talked about as a strategy before the pandemic, but it was something that we could do because that was the same way of getting presentations done like we had done before. But where we really pivoted and took that away is, I think because humans are habitual creatures, we really got in a mindset before of everything had to been done a certain way, like we talked about before. So great, here are our slides, and I'm going to read a slide like I would if I was in a breakout session or a plenary stage, because that's what we were used to. We said, let's stop with the slides. And the reason I thought we could stop with the slides is because we wanted to do something that was outside the box and let's see if it worked. And we created something like this. Let's have a conversation where we'll bring a panel on. Let's have a town hall discussion. Let's invite questions from people, and let's make it an organic conversation to address the concerns that our audience actually has, so that they're getting real time, real life experience and examples from an actual human, not on a piece of paper, not from an email, not from a social post, but we're still learning from a human being and what their relatable experience is, and how can I take that information and tie that to my own experience and my own work. Right. And I think that that's one thing that really helped us to start to realize, like, okay, people are coming in. And when we did that, we launched our first webinar July 1st of 2020 and kept it to multiple topic areas. And we segmented those topic areas. We segmented our approach just like we would anything else. And if you aren't segmenting and understanding, we just subject on the same webinar I do for a substance prevention campaign is not the same audience that would be a tobacco prevention campaign. They're two different audiences for us. Okay, great. We need to do one for each. And that's actually how we started. And through that experience, we started to learn a little bit more. And because we were forced in a digital world, I was like, aha, we have to do some research. So how do we do that? And what we discovered is that there's opportunity to create where I was getting maybe a few data points. If I was meeting somebody at a conference, I'd get their business card. Great. Maybe I write a couple of notes from their business card or their lead retrieval, or maybe somebody would submit a form, or, I was interacting with a customer and they would tell us what they liked or didn't like about our product. Great. How can I learn that same information from everyone that interacts with our product, right? You're not going to send a 30 question survey to every person you meet. No one's going to fill that out. But what it gave us the opportunity to do is, what is that journey that someone goes through with just a webinar, right? There is the email, there is the registration process, there is the polling process, there is the post webinar just feedback that they give, and how can we ask intentional questions about their experience. Did you enjoy your conversation today? Yes, that's great. But what else are you asking your potential customers to learn about what their needs are? We asked about budget. We asked about, are you worried about shifting of your budget or even your job? Is this topic relatable to you? What would change of the topic? Ask very poignant questions. And when we did that, I actually started to get around 25 data points that people were not afraid to fill in the information. Yes, I'm getting your psychographic information. I'm like, okay, this is who you are, where you are, and what you do. But when we started doing that, I found out that we had to segment even more. That we found out that within that audience, there was actually two individual audiences for us. One was somebody that was more of a junior level person that was like, we're coming to everything, we're engaging with everything. And there was also a decision maker that had a different pattern of engagement that I did not get when we were in person. So the virtual space allowed us to even segment that even more. And through those is we learned that, okay, people are attracted to different pieces of this conversation. So instead of saying, okay, well, this substance person is attracted to this campaign, let's send them that. This substance person is attracted to this video, let's just send them that. Why don't we send everybody everything? Why don't we create one page where all these videos, where all these things, give them every part of your experience and let them decide, pick their own adventure. So we got rid of the funnel. It wasn't when you did this, we do that, and moving forward until we drove them through to get a customer. What we did is we gave them everything and monitored that behavior. What are people clicking on? We used our CRM system to say, okay, Aaron, you're clicking this, but you're not clicking that. Or someone else is clicking this. And then after you click that, what did you do here? Really understanding that pattern and what people were interested in. And that helped us to develop the next topic in that own area, because without you having to tell me what you wanted, you told me what was interesting to you by engaging in all the pieces that I gave you. And I was able to figure out through that engagement what was most attractive to you as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. We're exploring a lot of the segmentation as well, and seeing a lot of great success. I can't hone in on that enough. So what, I guess, when you made that switch, what surprised you the most? Did you have certain expectations going in? I'm sure you were a little concerned, having leaned on these in-person events for so long, having some trepidation as you go into virtual, but I'd be interested to see maybe what your concerns were and then what became the result of that.
Yeah. To be honest with you, what surprised me the most, I think, is the fact that it worked, at least for us. Like one of the comparisons that, I give our leadership all the time is, we were doing great with 300 to 400 leads on a good year. Since we started just the webinar process, we've had over 30,000 people engage.
Wow.
And when we really look at who those hyper targeted people are, our database has almost tripled. To an insane amount of people, because what happened is that through that learning and constantly adjusting what people are attracted to and honing in the topic, honing in the resource, honing in the videos to say, okay, this is what they want, the engagement started to increase. And then what I also saw happening is that they were like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm getting so much content. I'm not being bothered by a salesperson. I'm not being harassed multiple times with this email, this chain, this call. People wanted to engage with more because they could do it on their own time, because everything was click, 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 click right here in front of them, and they weren't being harassed, right? And by honing that in, I was able to give them even more of what they wanted. And when they did that, Aaron, this is all great information. I want to share this with you. I think you would get value out of this too. And it started to create a web that other people were getting trapped into. So I think the thing that surprised me was just how fast that people were able to break through the noise, because they saw, oh, okay, this is really honed in. I don't have to keep going through all these different experiences that aren't really attractive to me. that you clearly thought intentionally about what was attractive to me, and I could click everything. And going from 400 leads to thousands of leads in a month was almost overwhelming, actually, for some of
Yeah.
our managers. And we had to figure out, how are we going to like focus those even more, because the amount of information and the amount of people that were gravitating towards us had just exponentially increased. And honestly, I think that just surprised us. We weren't, I don't think, prepared for the amount of engagement that really continuous learning of that engagement provided to us.
Yeah, those results are astounding. So and I think that's encouraging for anyone in the audience who might be questioning the value of a virtual tool. It just gives you so much more reach. It gives you the opportunity to just expand yourself to audiences in which the in-person, you're in a much more confined environment. And it's so funny to me now that I think back to my experiences at in-person trade shows and just really how archaic the whole kind of process is.
Yeah.
And I'm almost like, it's crazy that was only about a year ago that was status quo, because it feels like it's just not what today demands. And so, yeah, I mean, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about how these tactics can transition to that, because inevitably in person will come back, and I want them to. I think they're great. I think there is, what we are missing with the virtual setting, of course, is that relationship building component. Right. You could also argue that, to your point, you're capturing these data points that you're not in the in-person setting, to which you can nurture the relationship ongoing. So it's kind of a give and take, but it's definitely, hybrid is the way of the future. Virtual isn't going anywhere. I think it's just nothing but missed opportunity if folks aren't adapting some part of their strategy to that, as you've had testament to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one thing that's important to remember, and to hyper focus on that one point about virtual, right? Going back to what I said about the Generation Z and even millennials like myself, I'm an older millennial. I don't think it's going to go away, because we're not going to get the younger generations to put their phone down. People are not going to stop using email. People are not going to just turn off social media. People are not going to stop getting on their computers, because we've been forced in that world. I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is these are future customers, right? This is your future workforce. And so how are we creating opportunities for them to be a part of that, whether they be buyers or suppliers or inclusive in our own work? And we have to harp on that, right? You're not going to tell these younger people that, oh, no, we're just going to go back in person. We're not going to do this virtual thing anymore. I don't think it's going to be the case. And we have to really kind of remember that.
Absolutely. So I'm curious where referrals came into play into your overall strategy. I know that the referral loop is something that you really believe in, investing a lot of resources in. So I would love to just hear your tactics you've used and how you kind of see referrals growing in importance as an overall marketing tactic.
That's a great question. One of the things I think that we learn from too is, if people are liking it and they want to share it, remind them to share it all the time. Mm-hmm. I have a phrase, and I think I said at the beginning, is that, if we want to make real change in the world, we have to do it together. And I think that applies to anything that we do. And the only way we do it together is if you share knowledge. Mm-hmm. That is one of my favorite words to use. I use it in almost every email that I send, is sharing knowledge, right? I'm not just emailing people one time, for even just a webinar. We have 3 times that we engage with them, and we also have an integrated marketing strategy. Social says the same thing. Email says the same thing. Website says the same thing. Everything says the same thing. So you're having multiple touch points with the same message, but we're adjusting that message to make sure it applies to different types of people, right? Everyone is not the same. So for example, our first email will be a big email blast that comes from our founder, because people know our founder, and it'll announce the webinar. And even just in the header, it's just a click link. It's a CTA that says click right here. So if they're not even reading the email, cool, click on that. I'm also sending more direct emails that come from me that have the same topic. There's no creative to it. There's no fancy words to it. There's no length to it. It is this long, and it literally says, click here for details or more. And it says at the bottom, it says my same phrase, that you got to share knowledge. Don't forget to invite your networks, or don't forget to invite your colleagues. It says that in their confirmation email. It says that in their reminder email.
Mm.
In the subject of their reminder email, it says, hey, 1 hour to go. Don't forget to invite your networks. Don't forget to invite your colleagues. You're constantly reminding people. Then on the post email, it says it again. Hey, if you missed this webinar, no worries. Here's where we're going to show it again, or here's the recording. Don't forget to invite people so that you can watch it together, right? If you did come up to the webinar, here's the recording. Share that with your networks if you enjoyed it. On the websites, like I told you, we give resource pages. My follow-up emails, it's one link. Here's a resource page for case studies, videos, educational videos, marketing to our next webinar, those types of things. And right at the bottom is a form, and you click the button and it says forward this information to a colleague. You're always constantly getting people to forward your information. Now, when we did that, what we find is webinars and engagement, on average, 30% of every single event, every single digital engagement that we create, 30% on average of those engagements are brand new to our database that have never existed before. So we're constantly adding 30% more, 30% more, 30% more, because we're reminding people, if you enjoy it and you're getting a lot out of it, keep inviting other people, because the only way we're going to make real change is if we do it together. So you're empowering them to spread that knowledge and not trying to say, hey, just share with other people. We want to spread our marketing. That's not the approach. Empower others to be a part of that process.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And since we've chatted about that, I've gone in and added that to all of our emails, all of our touch points, landing pages, you name it. It's just such a low hanging fruit opportunity that I think a lot of people just overlook. So if there's one tactic that anyone can take away today, invest the couple of hours it might take you to embed that. It's really a low lift.
It's easy, and make it easy. The more simple you make these things, if people have to search, they're not going to do it. If they have to keep opening and clicking, they're not going to do it, right? I think we as marketers understand, like, if I have to go click, 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 that's not going to work, right? Even on registrations, if you have progressive profiling where I don't have to fill the same registration form out every time I go to your page, little things like that to make it easy. It's one link at the end of the email. Spread it to your friends. Here's the registration page. I don't even put click here because I don't even want people to think, oh, is this a trackable link? It's literally the full drawn out version of the website. So you can see right here that it is an actual website that you can click on and that you can forward, and you can feel comfortable forwarding that to anybody else. It's not unique to you. It's a web address. You can see it. You don't even have to guess. It's very, very simple, making it simple and just almost foolproof for people to give them the incentive to say, oh, I trust this, click, I'm done. Or in your email, forward. I know Erin's email address. I did that to you just a couple of weeks ago. I was like, hey, I got this thing, forward, just so that you could see it. And it took me, 5 seconds?
Yep. Absolutely. I know. I'm always forwarding away. It's like there's so much inspo out there. And so I agree. Make it as easy as you can for your database to share your great content. You're putting so much time. It's funny. I think about so much emphasis is put on the content strategy, creating the content, promoting it. And then it's like that post download nurture is often overlooked. And then I think same thing with events, which is why I think, again, incorporating that forward to a friend after you host an event or a webinar, there's so much valuable information that comes from these. I know, for example, this interview, I'm going to be able to spin into a blog post, into some social shareable assets, maybe even a content piece. Like there's just so much value to where you don't have to start from scratch, and you can really just repurposing and bite-sized content. That's the way of the future. So especially as you mentioned, you're a lean team, I'm a lean team. It's really helped me just scale so much quicker.
And I think that's a good thing, is understanding the scalability and understanding what your potential customers want. What are they engaging with? Okay, right? Going back to that engagement, I like what you said, I think where a lot of our successes come from was really focusing more on the post experience. A lot of people, like if we were at a conference, like, okay, I got a hot sheet list. I'll email these people. Here's a sales tool, whatever. I may follow up. If they open it, I'll send them another one, that kind of thing. I think we were kind of there, but now in this virtual space, the follow-up has actually become the most valuable part of our experience, because you got them right there. If they're in the webinar, you got them right there. They're here listening to what you have to say. Send them the links, show them the videos, make them a part of the process and empower them to make it theirs. Like when we do our webinars, I talk directly to people, right? You got them there and I say, I'm going to send you this thing. I'm going to show you this video. The video that's here, it's going to be on this page. I'm giving you the CTA before you've even received it so that you know that this is about you. And so that post experience has been something that has been the world that they're expecting and the world, the web that they're actually looking forward to, because they know they're going to get a lot of value out of it without being inundated by a person.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing that bothers me more than just no one wants to be bothered. So, especially to your point, we're getting more emails than ever before. And a lot of it is a lot of the same. And so if you're going to reach out to someone, you need to make it worthwhile.
Right.
But yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I think referral loop, it's interesting. I feel like in B2C, the whole idea of referrals and influencers and all of that is really harped on, and a lot of people invest in that. And I think we're actually going to see that over time transition more into these B2B and more traditional marketing funnels, because it really is the power. I mean, whenever I go to buy anything or do anything, the first thing I do is ask someone that I know and trust.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, like, we need to continue to think about creative ways to give people the resources to become their advocates for our brands.
Right.
And, that inherently happens when you create great content, you use data to curate these experiences. But something that you had mentioned in a past conversation we had that really stuck with me is we were talking about ABM and where that comes into play. And you were like, ABM is really just a micro influencer strategy in essence. So I would love for you to expand on that and maybe give some examples and that people can take away from.
Yeah, of course. So honestly, this strategy has a lot to do with the referral loop. To what you said, word of mouth has always been the best form of advertising. So like you said, like when I was a little kid, if my mom said, eat this, I trusted her, I would eat it. Right. And the same is the same as in terms of like how we consume media, how we consume knowledge. I get an email. I know you as a brand. Sure, I could trust you as a brand. But if I get a forward email from one of my colleagues that I've been working with from that same brand, I am way more likely to open it. I'm way more likely to click on that. Right. So word of mouth has always been that case. So your CTA should be to get people to be the word of mouth. And what I found and what worked for us is that actually was the case. And so when the referral loop kept snowballing 30% every time, right? Those people with the first 30% that kept the snowballing effect, I'll use you, Aaron, for example. If you went to our first one, you've now been to maybe 12, 15. We've now done 27 webinars here since July 1st. And there are some people that have been to more than 60% of those. So they're now pretty much micro influencers. I may have not have met them in person, but they have engaged with enough of our content that they know who we are, and they can talk to about how great this was or how great that was or what value that we got out of it. The more people, and this is trackable, the more people that experience your engagement and engage with your product, let's say your emails, your webinars, they come to hear you talk, whatever you can do to track, they're clicking on stuff, they're downloading, they're watching videos, the more likely they are to share those with more people because they're expanding the value. Okay. So by giving them more, you're creating the value in this amount of time instead of this amount of time. Okay. So we'll start there. So I've got, in less than 8 months, I have a lot of value in engaging with your brand. I'm sharing that with a lot of people. And what we saw is that was common across multiple discipline areas. That was common across, regardless of where they were in their tier of decision maker at the top, or I'm an intern or coordinator, junior level person. The behavior was the same. One of our target accounts that we had, what I noticed when we first started the webinar process, we started with 14 people in my database for a specific account, a specific company. When I looked at it in January of this year, it was up to 119 in that same company. So just within 6 months, we went from 14 to 119 because those 14 or less people saw value and it added more. Then they saw value and it added more and it added more and it added more into one account, to the point to where when we only had maybe 14 or less people that was engaging with us, and it's not just being aware, it was engaging, that they felt that they needed to invite more people. And so what happens? If there's 200 people in that company, you now have half the company that is aware of your brand, not just aware of it, but understands your brand, has things that they have clicked on, have downloaded, and can share and distribute without spending any money.
Yep.
And so by doing that, it has given us the opportunity to go after them on an account-based marketing level, which was never a strategy for us. Because now I could go to that account and they already knew who I was. They had seen me here. And so we could then, as a company, go after and say, hey, I noticed you did this, and this. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What did you learn? What's missing? And it created conversation that has actually turned that person into a client as of this year. So even something as so simple as asking them to share and giving them everything, and then taking that long term, 8 months later, into a conversation with all of those people, they're now customers of ours, and not just in one topic area, but multiple topic areas. And then from there, what happened is they then understood needs across multiple disciplines, because there's multiple topic areas. Again, substances and tobacco, they don't overlap. They're not in the same office. They don't share budgets, but they are still the same company to us. Okay. So even though they're different departments, they still know each other. So they're like, hey, I know that they do, the tobacco people are like, hey, I just found out they do substances stuff too. Let me forward that to you. And so what that created is that we actually were able to use the same account to get multiple pieces of business, and that created a relationship. So we were able to nurture that relationship by sharing knowledge, by encouraging them to share it with their other people, so that they acted as influencers for us, right? And then they were like, okay, wow, you guys know what you're doing. Hey, we have an RFP that's going to be coming out soon. I want to share that your way. So now that relationship has then created more potential business for us, because they see value in working with us or just being a part of and aware of what we're doing. So even in just that short period of time, all those tiny little steps can add up to really, really massive changes in the way that your business development strategy can actually work and absorb, potential business.
Yeah, that's super impressive. I'm curious, as you were building these relationships, and in general, as you've kind of shifted your overall approach, what is the content that you're seeing the highest conversion off of, or the best engagement? How has that shifted from pre-pandemic to now?
That's a really, really great question. And I find that it shifts based on the new segmented audience. I find that a lot of our senior level decision makers, and again, this is what our customers need. And again, for the folks that are safe at home, I would encourage you to really think intentionally, what do my customers need? And if you don't know, you should be asking them.
Yep.
And by asking them, I found out there were two different things that people gravitated toward: the research, the data, not the frilly fun pictures and the funny engagements and the fun music and the beautiful videos. That wasn't what decision makers need. I needed to see budget information. I needed to see statistics about our research, that kind of stuff. Okay, great. I found that those people were downloading case studies more. But the more junior level people really wanted our educational videos. It was an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more. And then both parties loved the videos. So what did we take away from that? Our creative design is what people were attracted to. So I expanded on that. So when I put up a resource page about tobacco prevention after a tobacco webinar, there's case studies at the top, because decision makers, you have to understand their behavior. Decision makers are not going to spend 2 hours scrolling through everything.
Right.
So knowing that decision makers cared more about the data part of it, I'm putting it at top because that's the first thing they need to see. They don't have time to scroll. They're giving you a couple minutes, and I need exactly what I need when I need it. Cool. The educational videos are at the bottom of that page, past the creative pieces. So now there's 6 campaign videos as examples of videos that we could do for you. Great. So people will watch those. Then the educational videos. And the fun thing is that all of this is tied together. There's YouTube, there's social media, there's links to other landing pages. So it's all mapped, and understanding how those maps work so that you're keeping them in a web, right? They're clicking and they're moving around and they're not leaving what you're doing, so that your bounce rates are going down, so that your engagement levels are going up. So kind of keep that in mind. And so we found that people were engaging with different pieces and understanding what the most important customer base is for you. Give it to them quickly. But understanding those junior level people are still important. We're not going to discontinue those, because in order to get more decision makers, We need more cheerleaders because they're junior level people, right? Think about when you on the phone have needed maybe to get your boss to sign on to a new system of some kind, right? You're running demos, you're putting all this information together. You are the cheerleader for what you want to see that works for what you need to do. Hey, boss, here's all my research. Here's all my stuff. I think this works. Those junior level people are still important. So even though they're not the decision maker, we can't discount them. Everyone in the account is important. So make sure you're structuring everything so that everybody gets what they need. At the same time, you're prioritizing it based on the most important person to you.
Yeah, and there's so much inherent SEO value behind a page like that as well. It's almost like each of those pages is their own pillar page in which you're just building a super robust repository of resources, links, everything that they need. And I've always been a big advocate of the pillar page strategy in general. And I think that's really, really an interesting approach. So thanks for going a little more in depth there.
Of course.
And yeah, I can't stress it enough. I have seen so much success. I mean, obviously, yes, you need to cater to the decision maker, but focusing on that junior persona is so valuable because they're going to be the end user in the tool. They're going to be in the nitty gritty of it all. You really need to win them over. I remember some of the best feedback I got at a conference once was, we're fangirls of your content, of your blog. Like you want to make them true fans of what you're doing, and just know it really comes down to, like you said, psychology, and education, knowing what they need, giving them what they need, opening up, getting them, also just educating them on what's next in the market as well, having a very forward thinking approach. Because especially now, like I said, one size does not fit all. It's a completely new territory that we're in. And with that, I think it really lends itself to this next question that I want to close things out with before we jump into polls and Q&A is, what's next? How are we going to transition all of these great lessons learned and tactics as we go back in person, as we kind of have that hybrid approach, which I'm sure is what you're planning on your end, but would love to just hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And that's actually some of the strategic planning that I'm doing right now is we're going to go back in person, right? Inoculation is happening. There's one of our biggest conferences, and what we're doing is saying they're going to be back in person maybe toward the end of the year. I'm like, okay, that's kind of soon, but thinking about that, what is that going to look like? And I can tell you right now, we're not going back to printing a bunch of things. We had a very robust 6-figure budget, and I spent 10% of our budget in the last year and a half than what I had in the past. And we had exponentially by 5 times increased our leads. Okay. Wow. I'm gonna say that again. 10% of my usual budget, but increased our leads by 5 times. That is a very significant change. And okay, well, we still need to go to conferences. So one of the key takeaways is, okay, I'm going to try something new. And in the virtual conference space is, okay, I'm going to still engage with that. And we've done now 3 conferences this year that have been virtual. And I'm like, okay, there's a virtual exhibit booth. If you were to ask me before the pandemic if I should do a virtual booth, I would tell you, hell no. I hated virtual exhibit halls. I didn't think that they were worth the time. I never saw value out of them. I don't think people understood how to engage with them or even how to build a good system.
Yep.
And I still don't think everyone knows how to build the best system. But what everyone does do is give me a conference, a sponsor or an exhibit click.
Yep.
Okay. Well, if you are only going to give me a click, I'm going to take advantage of that. And the resource pages and the different things that we used to give people after the webinars, I was like, what would happen if I would apply that to a conference? What if I stopped thinking if I was at a conference? I used to give out case studies, about us brochures. I used to give cards to go to our YouTube channel. I used to give all these papers in this bag, and I was spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on printing. Okay, well, I'm giving out more than that now, and I haven't printed a single thing. But I had more people download the About Us brochure in the past year than what I printed in 2019.
Wow.
More downloads than printed. Okay. And those printed pieces went into the garbage can. No one took that home. It was like, yeah, because it wasn't intentionally giving it to people. It was just giving it to whoever might take it. Right. This time it's people actually took it because they wanted it. And I think that was the key things that I took away. So we actually we had this thing called the RX Summit, which is a conference that was built for opioid meth and fentanyl abuse and misuse. And so we went, conference we do every year. We did 1 presentation for them and 1 click. Through that experience, we drove over 450 people to our resource page. We gained over 1,000 new contacts through the webinar, through the presentation experience, and we gained over 25,000 engagements in 1 week on our website from one click link at a conference, because there wasn't a person bothering them. There wasn't somebody trolling you on a trade show floor. I never actually spoke words to a single person. No one actually submitted a form saying, I want more information from you on the exhibitor website. Everything was shuttled to our website, because then I could track them and see who was clicking, who was visiting, who was watching. So I learned a lot from that experience. How many of us can say that I went to a conference, came home, and saw 25,000 impressions on my website? I don't think any of us.
No.
But what I think I'm going to take away from that experience is, how can I go back to in person and not have to print so much? What can I do to create a digital experience that is in person to give people what they need? Like, one of the things I'm playing with now is there an iPad experience where I can actually create that same digital thing and I put it on an iPad stand and I'm just sitting there, but what am I doing to get them there? I'm playing the videos. I have information in my booth about case studies, still understanding what those two audiences are attracted to: pretty visual aids in education and data. Okay, great. I'm going to lead with that data. Maybe that's what's on my iPad screen, but it's not going to be me as a person that's going to say it. And get these people to touch the screen, get them to interact with it without having to feel bothered. And I think that's what we're going to do. And then letting them decide, do they want to follow up? Do they want to download this resource? Sure, I'm going to click that, send that to me. Let them decide their own journey, even if they're standing in front of you, and then engage with them. Don't ignore them. We're still going to engage with them, because we have to be people, persons, and build that community, build that network, but finding value in bridging in person with a virtual experience so that they can see, and then making that an integrated tool future on. You know, if you do conferences, if you do events, are you going to do a hybrid? You know, we do a conference, and one of the things we're playing with is that we record our our plenaries already. Okay, well, why aren't we just broadcasting that? Why isn't there a registration process? Because not everybody's going to be able to afford to go. How can we continue to provide this virtual experience? I can tell you now, we're not going to stop doing webinars. But what we are going to do is we will probably do a webinar specifically for the people at the conference as an exclusive offering, so that they can invite their networks. If I'm meeting one person like Aaron from Fondi, hey, Aaron, we're going to do an exclusive webinar, maybe a topic we've already done before, or maybe it's the presentation that you saw at the conference. Great, let's do a webinar version of it, and you invite everybody at your office so that they can get the same knowledge you did. Finding ways to bridge those gaps and to take that knowledge and continue it moving forward, even in an in-person setting, I think is very important for us to continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another interesting piece to this is, I mean, your results speak for yourselves. Obviously, in the virtual setting, you've captured way more emails, but by continuing to have those components in person, what I found at a lot of trade shows, it just felt like it was all about the hot leads. We want the hot leads. And I'm running around with my scanner. I have my collateral. I'm getting paper cut, you know, and I'm just like, this is not how it's supposed to be, you know? And so where I love this approach is you're not missing, because I think so many times I was so focused on just those key customers, capturing certain, you know, notes from certain meetings. And then you have all these other people who are interested, who come by, who may not be ready yet. And to your point, they were traditionally taking a piece of paper, going away. Now you have this opportunity to capture their email, to start really forming that relationship early on, not only just focusing on those hot leads that you think are going to close as a result, because those could arguably be more valuable in the long run for you.
Right. And focusing on education, like I love how you said it, you may not be a hot lead right now, but that doesn't mean they won't get value in the experience that you provide to them in the long run. That's what works in our area, right? If you have a customer that's ready to buy that right now, great. Let me get your information. Let's talk. I want to give you what you need. But don't exclude those people that aren't ready to buy right now. Give them opportunity to follow up. Give them opportunity to stay engaged with you, to make them customers and make them influencers in the long run. Leading with education as your tool and providing them resources, and not saying, hey, let me shove sales down your throat. Marketing to sales, that's what the funnel is, and you have to buy it because that's the next step. Stop doing that. Let them tell you when they're ready to be sold to. You continue to give them what they want, to stay nurtured and to stay in your web of influence. A funnel has one direction. A web, you stay in that web until they're ready to fall through. and they will let you know when they're ready, because
Yep.
they'll reach out to you because they already see value in your experience.
Right. Absolutely. Great. I think in terms of tactics, that's and I want to definitely make time for Q&A and polls. So we can hop into the poll questions. I'd also be curious, CJ, what your answers would be. So the first was specific to marketing tactics that are driving. Surprised that organic SEO is at the top. I think it really just, it echoes what you were talking about earlier about referral marketing and really building out the education piece and just understanding what people are searching for. Inherently, that's what it comes down to. And that's what I really like about the shift in Google's algorithm as of this year is, yes, of course, keyword strategy is important, but what they're really looking for is the emphasis on user experience. How are they navigating through your website? Like, and that's really what I think is why SEO is, no surprise, driving quality leads. Are you seeing that same trend, CJ, or would you argue that it's virtual now?
I would argue it's virtual now. SEO does drive some traffic for us, but to be honest with you, our webinar strategy has exponentially, again, 30% new people that have never engaged with us before, almost every single webinar we've done. So think 30% times 27, because it's a human engagement. I'm having a conversation, right? Like, and you're here for an hour. You're going to talk about that. You're going to share this video with people. There's a lot more people are getting out of it. And then they're going to your website because that's where you're sending them for resources and education. I think for us, it's been the webinars, but exponentially greater has been the webinars. And the webinars will drive the traffic that will generate more SEO.
And so would you say it's the live engagement, or would you say it's that post-event nurture that you're seeing more volume come from?
That's a great question. I would probably say it's the live engagement, because people see value in hearing from a person. I'm telling you my experience. You're not reading it. You're not guessing. You're not researching it through Google. You're hearing from a person that this was my experience. This is what worked for me. You should give it a try, right? Okay, great. And then I send you follow-up that can help support that claim. Great, now I'm engaging with it. So I think going back to, like, if you know me, you trust me more. When you see me on a webinar, I host every one of them. You have started to learn to trust me. I have people that will literally chat with me in the webinar and I've never even met them before, right? And so you're starting to trust me as a person because I'm telling you something over and over again. And then once you see, oh, wow, he was right, this actually worked. Now you become more trusted. So you're going to keep coming back to that in-person engagement. And so I do think the conversations have a lot to do more within just what can I click on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's opportunities. I mean, even now, as we're seeing with these polls, like, how can I be strategic, use this information to then create content that's going to cater more to these folks? So for example, if the biggest challenge is driving qualified leads from virtual events, your how-to guide on how to drive more like, you can just make it super curated. And again, to your point, you're capturing those data points to operate from a place of knowledge versus assumption, which really we have no excuse to operate from assumptions this day and age with all of the data we have at our disposal. And I guess that brings me to the last poll, which, again, biggest challenge with virtual driving qualified leads. I think a lot of the tactics you shared today will help folks rethink their approach and how they can improve that aspect. And then, of course, audience engagement, improving ROI. I think out of that audience engagement, audience engagement is still something that I feel like we're defining and understanding what really resonates with people. It's so crowded right now. And like, yes, polls is one tactic, Q&A is another tactic, but really, I think that there's so much more opportunity. And I would love to hear where you would fall in this poll and what you think.
Yeah, I would probably say audience engagement would be, if I had to say, the biggest challenge for virtual events. I hear people say qualified leads, but for us, again, we do measure, like, if Erin clicked and engaged this much, she's been to 25 webinars versus one, that's how we learn the difference of the two types of people, but we don't harass those people. If Erin's been to 25, I'm not sending her an email saying, hey, buy my product. Erin knows me now enough and trusts what I'm saying. She's going to come to me when she's ready, like I said before. So qualified leads, we're actually getting a lot more leads by people coming back to us saying, okay, I'm ready to talk to you. In audience engagement, I think it has been tough, especially for our webinars. I mean, we have on average of anywhere between 600 to 1,000 attendees each one. And so I think it has been tough. And in small ways, I open the chat up. In the very beginning, I get people used to the chat. I say, go ahead, use the chat, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Let everyone in the room know who you are, to get them used to talking to each other. They're sharing links, they're sharing information. Is there thought leadership opportunity to where you're doing smaller meetings that are more segmented, right? To give opportunity for thought leadership. I went to a virtual conference recently that I really liked. They had 10 breakout rooms, and there was 10 individuals. There was one individual, 10 of them each room, that was helping to facilitate the conversation. You could jump from room to room, and it was a different topic area in each one. And you had an opportunity. It was capped at 10 people so that you could engage. Finding ways to break it out, to take your virtual setting and give everyone an opportunity to participate. Yes, I can click a poll. Yes, I can type in a chat, but what can I do to contribute to the conversation?
Absolutely. And again, I mean, another thing, going back to in-person events, something I found was you meet so many incredible people and then you lose touch with them after the fact. So there's a lot of missed networking opportunities. And I think with virtual, there's a way in which you can really bridge that gap. I know with Fundy, we have a speed networking tool in which it will randomly pair you with someone at the event, and you get to know each other. You can extend the session. And it'd be really interesting to, in the future, explore how you can integrate LinkedIn profiles and staying connected and making it so instantaneous. So you're building these network effects. And then to your point, it's going into this referral loop, and you're just like 10xing your exposure.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how that continues to evolve, because let's be honest, platforms like Zoom, they're not cutting it for engagement. And we're spending all day in Zoom on meetings. So how do you really make, pardon me, how do you make a splash? How do you make it different? How do you really wow your audience? I think that's something that will continue to change in the next year, but it's promising to see a lot of these tools already, and understanding where there's new opportunities to grow.
Totally agree.
But yeah, with that, I think it brings us to the end today, CJ. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. I'll be sure to be sending out an email with a link to the recording, some highlights, so that you can revisit everything that we've discussed, and be sure to share with your networks as well.
Yes.
If there's one thing you can learn from today, share away. Share.
And encourage others to share.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, too, I did put my LinkedIn in the profile here, too. So please feel free to connect. I like to learn from others. Again, the only way we're going to make real changes is if we do it together. We have to keep sharing knowledge. And I still learn from so many of you. Just, I'm sure you may have had a key takeaway. I want to keep learning from you. Please connect on LinkedIn. Post about what's going on in your communities, what's working for you, what's not working for you. And let's have some thought leadership with fellow marketers. Again, I want to learn from you just as much as you may have learned from this conversation.
Well, thank you. I know we all learned a lot from you today, CJ. So again, appreciate it. And to everyone who attended, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday afternoon.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. And no matter what you do in the world, go do good.
Love it. All right. Thank you.
Bye, Erin. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. Have a good day.
Thanks.